Hi, I'm Attorney General Dana Nessel, and I'm here to announce the results of 2 investigations conducted by my department regarding what are known as in-custody deaths. Prior to becoming the Attorney General, I worked as a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney for over 25 years. My experience included the review of in-custody death and homicide cases, and I've tried to bring that experience to this office and my review of these 2 cases. In-custody deaths are the deaths of inmates who are in the custody of law enforcement. In these instances, the law enforcement entities are the Muskegon County Jail and the Lansing Police Department Detention Facility. The safety of an individual in the custody of law enforcement is their responsibility. Officers are entrusted to ensure the well-being of individuals who are often in distress. The 2 instances I will review today involve 2 men who meant something to their family members and loved ones. They were human beings who deserved to be treated with respect and dignity. The loss of human life is a tragedy, and the responsibility of my office is to determine whether that loss of life was the result of an unfortunate set of circumstances or because of a criminal act. While there is little the Department of Attorney General can do to provide comfort to the families of these 2 men, it is our duty and responsibility to perform a thorough investigation of each instance and pursue criminal charges where appropriate. The decision in each case was strictly based on the evidence and the law that applies to that evidence. It may not make sense to those who are mourning the loss of a loved one, and we understand their anger and sympathize with their grief. My heart goes out to the families of these 2 men. First is the in-custody death of 39-year-old Paul Bulthouse while in the Muskegon County Jail. Mr. Bulthouse was arrested on March 22, 2019 by the Norton Shores Police Department and was brought to the Muskegon County Jail on a probation detainer. He was classified as suicidal, which required he be monitored by officers every 15 minutes. His cell was always in close proximity to the booking center, and he was always visible on video monitors. 13 days later, Mr. Bulthouse died in custody at 5:30 a.m. on April 4, 2019, after suffering approximately 22 visible seizures in 5.5 hours. None of the seizure instances were treated by the deputies nor the registered nurse on site that night, even though evidence will show they were aware of the seizure activity. Based upon our thorough and comprehensive review of all evidence presented, including more than 9 hours of video and extensive amounts of police reports and over 400 pages of medical records, consultation with medical experts, and conducting additional interviews, we are charging 5 individuals with involuntary manslaughter, failure to perform a legal duty, a 15-year felony. The elements of involuntary manslaughter are: 1, the defendants had a legal duty imposed by law. 2, the defendants knew of the duty. 3, the defendants willfully neglected that duty, and their failure to perform the duty was grossly negligent to human life. And 4, that the death of the victim was directly caused by the defendant's failure to perform their duties. For their willful neglect of duty in caring for Mr. Bulthouse, we are charging the following individuals: Deputy Sergeant David Vanderland, Deputy Jeffrey Patterson, Deputy Crystal Greb, Deputy Jamal Lane, and former WellPath registered nurse Aubrey Schatz. These are our allegations, and until and unless the defendants are found guilty in a court of law, they are presumed innocent. We know that the defendants were in a position to observe, both on camera and in person, Mr. Bulthouse's seizures, and yet they simply failed to assist him or care for him. Deputies Vanderland, Patterson, Lane, and Greb had an occupational responsibility as Muskegon County Corrections deputies to care for the well-being of all prisoners. Nurse Schatz was a registered nurse assigned to provide care for Mr. Bulthouse. Based on our investigation, we allege that these defendants failed to perform their legal duties, and that failure to do so was done in a grossly negligent manner that led to Mr. Bulthouse's death. Turning now to the death of Mr. Anthony Hulan in the Lansing City Jail. Mr. Hulan was a 54-year-old man who died in police custody. On April 10th of last year, at 12:50 p.m., members of the Lansing Police Department were called to an incident involving Mr. Hulan. He was observed having erratic behavior and was believed to have assaulted his roommate. The roommate was observed to have a visibly bruised and swollen left eye with dried blood on his face and a cut below his eye. Based on the officer's observations and the statements provided at the scene that Mr. Hulan had punched his roommate several times, he was arrested for domestic violence. He was brought to the Lansing Police Department detention facility and was booked at approximately 1:55 p.m. After being booked into the jail, Mr. Hulan was placed in a cell and his handcuffs were removed. While in the cell, he displayed conduct that led officers to believe he was under the influence of a controlled substance. He began taking his clothes off and was pacing the floor of the cell and yelling. After approximately 8 hours of witnessing this behavior, staff called the Lansing Fire Department to have Mr. Hulan transferred to the hospital for a medical evaluation. Mr. Hulan was ultimately transported to Sparrow Hospital for evaluation, where the treating physician tested and found he was positive for methamphetamines and ecstasy. He was observed pulling on his wrist restraints, yelling and thrashing about the hospital bed almost continually while at Sparrow Hospital. Shortly after his arrival, Mr. Hulan was diagnosed with a substance abuse disorder, cleared, and medically discharged by the hospital. We're going to show a series of videos from body-worn cameras and jail cell video. These images are disturbing and should not be watched by all audiences. You will see a 15-second video clip without audio because the nurse is discussing medical history with the officer. Mr. Hulan is writhing around on the hospital bed. He's handcuffed at the wrists and is wearing ankle restraints. Additional officers were called to the hospital to help get Mr. Hulan from the hospital bed to the waiting police car for transport back to the Lansing jail. And as you will see on the clip, Mr. Hulan is exhibiting clear signs of drug intoxication and is unable to control his body movements. He is cursing at officers while they move him from the hospital bed at the waiting wheelchair.
Anthony!
Oh, shit,
Anthony,
what?
sit up.
Oh.
Sit up. Here. Keep. Listen.
Relax, please.
Listen.
Just do your best to sit still, okay?
Anthony, listen to me. Keep your arm behind your back.
I'm not doing it on purpose.
Keep.
She's gouging me, that thing.
Hey, you have to sit still.
Anthony, just do your best, okay? I know it's hard.
My bed's in wheels, so it doesn't do much. See? It's easy. Hold on. No, it's not you right now. Too bad to it. It's not that hard, dude.
All right.
See that?
Hey, Anthony, we're going to hold you up just like this. Keep.
Ouchie!
I'm not. What?
No! It hurts! Too bad!
I know. I'm going to take it
God
off.
damn!
I'm going to take it off.
Don't. It's hurts bad, dude.
Quick play.
I'm going to take the bottom off.
We're done.
I'll do my own thing.
Walking.
We're done.
Are we going to do a wheelchair? That's probably our best bet. Do we have one available? Because there's no way he's going to be able to walk into something like this.
Are you able to sit up? We're going to hold you up, all right?
When you...
It's right there. It's instantly. Both sides hard.
Okay, when you pull forward, you're
You sit
tightening
up,
them.
we will loosen it. But you
When
gotta
I
stay
sit up and move forward, so when you sit up, I'll get you. Yeah. No, there.
Don't jerk, because you're gonna hurt yourself, okay?
Yeah, I can.
Try your best. Try your best.
Hey, I don't want to get. You don't want to get poked by this.
Okay, well,
Don't jam my finger.
I can't do anything different. So leave out. I got hips and thrust, you know. Jesus Christ. Yes. They don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use it. You bring the hips back closer to you, it's a life lot of you. God damn. That hurt.
All right, sit up.
All right, hang on. I gotta grab some stuff.
Hand me on your back.
Hey, behind. Right there. Okay.
I do have to loosen this other one up a little bit.
Look, stay right there. Stay right there.
Right, way over.
Okay, he's trying to help. Okay, sit tight.
Right there. Stay right there.
Oh man, it's hard. It smashed my bones.
Relax,
Ah,
relax.
it's really
You
smashed
need to relax. He's trying to help. Sit still.
He's not doing it. It hurts, dude. I think you can get it. All right.
All right, you're sitting in this chair.
Stand up.
See.
Stand up.
See.
Stand up. Take a seat in the chair.
Turn around.
It's important to remember Mr. Hulan was medically discharged by hospital staff. This clip illustrates Mr. Hulan getting into the backseat of the waiting police vehicle. You will notice at the 50-second mark, 2 officers to the left of Mr. Hulan are assisting him into the back seat. They both remove their hands from his body and he strikes the back of his head on the frame of the vehicle. He then begins yelling and lunges at the officers who respond by pushing him into the car.
Okay. Holy fuck. We're gonna go easy on her. Okay? Work together.
Stop.
Look at me, man. Do this.
Ow!
What did I do? Do that to me again. We're going now. That hurts so bad. My hand hurts so bad right now.
You're doing this to yourself.
Here, let me
Stand up.
Okay. Relax. Go with this. That can. Shit. Okay? There's a party bomb right there. You see it? Okay.
Sit in the car.
I'm coming. Relax.
Yep, just sit in the car. Get up there.
Okay, I'm going, man. Hurts. Here we go. God damn.
Here's the still clip at the moment Mr. Hulan strikes his head on the door frame. You can see the officer's hands are not on his body and that he did not intentionally strike his head. During the 2-minute transport back to the jail, Mr. Hulan was breathing heavily and asking for water. An officer tells him that he doesn't have any water, but he can have some when they get to the jail. In addition, the officer tells him to focus on his breathing and asks if he wants some cool air.
I don't have anything to drink. Give me 2 minutes. We're gonna be at the jail, okay? And then you can get some water. It won't hurt if you just sit still and focus on your breathing. Focus on your breathing.
What?
Once in the holding cell, officers attempted to remove the leg chains on Mr. Hulan's ankles. He was agitated and twitching throughout all his interactions with officers who had a difficult time removing leg restraints and handcuffs. He continued to thrash and would not follow officers' commands. Video footage shows Mr. Hulan kicking at officers as they attempted to remove his leg restraints. His erratic behavior, violent movements, and unwillingness to follow instructions led the officers to attempt to restrain him to lessen his ability to harm himself or others by restricting his movements with the use of belly restraints. It is important to note that we do not believe that Mr. Hulan was intentionally resisting officers when he failed to comply with their commands. In fact, the evidence suggests he simply could not control himself or his movements due to the drugs he had previously consumed. Based on the evidence reviewed, we believe Mr. Hulan, who was reportedly an experienced meth user, may have unknowingly ingested an unknown, dangerous substance laced in the meth that affected his behaviors in ways that he did not contemplate. Regardless of the cause, he did not cooperate or comply with officers to allow them to safely remove his restraints and protect him. It took approximately 3 minutes and 36 seconds for officers to place the belly restraint on Mr. Hulan. Restraints may be utilized by jail personnel for inmate behavior that is violent, assaultive, self-destructive, and or capable of or does cause damage to the department or detainee property. Now, it should be noted that Mr. Hulan stood 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed 228 pounds, and had a 33.67 body mass index. It's clear from the evidence that the detention personnel used the belly restraints in an effort to keep Mr. Hulan from hurting himself or staff. Mr. Hulan was unable to comply and fell on the floor during this time, struggling with the officers. One officer held his legs to stop him from kicking. 2 other officers attempted to put the restraints around his waist while he continued to resist and scream. Once on the ground, after approximately 3 minutes and 46 seconds, Mr. Hulan stopped struggling and went limp. It takes an additional approximate 2 minutes, 12 seconds to get the belly restraints on. With the restraints in place, officers attempted to sit Mr. Hulan up, but found him to be completely unresponsive and without a pulse. In total, officers had Mr. Hulan on the ground for 5 minutes and 17 seconds. Here, the struggle was brief, and no further force was used once the restraint belt was put in place. Once the belt was on, they did not continue to hold him down. As soon as the officers recognized that he was not breathing, they took reasonable steps to revive him. They attempted a sternum rub, then CPR, and an AED. They promptly called EMS. Mr. Hulan was transferred to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 2:12 a.m. on April 11th.
Do your best not to kick, okay? Take it up, take it up.
In this clip, you see the officers discuss using the belly restraints, and the officer go to retrieve them.
I'm passing out. No! Come on, that's right. I'm just really not breathing. I'm just really not breathing.
I'm just trying to help you out, man.
Okay.
In this clip, Mr. Hulan stops making noises and stops struggling. It takes officers 1 minute and 32 seconds to finish putting the belly restraints on Mr. Hulan and to sit him up.
You go out here. All right. Let's get over there. Outside. Let's try a little bit. Sleeping? Is he sleeping? He's good. Good. Move towards trouble. I'm just towards you. Ready? Yep. Come back here. You want to turn him up?
Michigan State Police conducted a complete and thorough investigation into Mr. Hulan's death and submitted their findings to our department for review to determine what, if any, charges might be appropriate as a result of Mr. Hulan's death. Mr. Hulan's autopsy revealed high levels of amphetamines and methamphetamines in his system at the time of his death. He also suffered from hypertensive and atherosclerotic disease, which according to the medical examiner contributed to his death. Our attorneys reviewed more than 40 hours of videos, including body-worn camera and stationary cell camera videos, and found insufficient evidence to justify criminal charges against the officers involved. Video evidence shows Lansing police officers followed protocol, acted professionally, and treated Mr. Hulan with dignity and respect throughout the time he was in custody. We found no evidence that any officer intentionally committed any injury to Mr. Hulan or acted in any way to inflict harm. Unfortunately, there have been media reports that appear to indicate officers intentionally struck Mr. Hulan 3 times in the head, yet the video evidence does not support that fact. In fact, the video evidence shows the officers never intentionally struck Mr. Hulan. The evidence developed during the investigation simply fails to establish the use of unreasonable force by any of the officers. It is important to note that to sustain a charge of murder against these officers, we must be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the officers acted in a grossly negligent manner that caused the death of Mr. Hulan. Gross negligence means willfully disregarding the results to others that might follow from an act or a failure to act. The officers did not act in a grossly negligent manner. Here, there is no evidence from which an intent to kill or seriously injure Mr. Hulan can be inferred. Furthermore, the force used by the officers was justified even though it led to the prisoner's death. Murder charges cannot be supported. Likewise, there is insufficient evidence to support a manslaughter charge. The officers certainly had a duty to protect Mr. Hulan from harm while he was in custody and to refrain from actions that would cause him harm. However, the evidence demonstrates that throughout his confinement, they acted to protect him by ensuring the medical evaluation, using no more force to restrain him than was required by the circumstances, and by promptly summoning EMS when he went into distress. There is simply insufficient evidence to demonstrate conduct or omission rising to the level of gross negligence. While the officers were clearly acting in the exercise of their duties or under the color of office, when they struggled to place the restraint belt on the prisoner and afterward, the evidence is simply insufficient to establish they were engaging in corrupt behavior or that they willfully neglected to perform a duty required by law. The evidence developed during the investigation fails to establish the use of unreasonable force by any of the officers, and therefore the warrant is denied. Our thorough investigations of each tragedy revealed significant differences between Mr. Bulthouse's in-custody death in the Muskegon County Jail and the death of Mr. Hulan in the Lansing Police Department's Detention Center. Mr. Bulthouse died of gross neglect and due to complete disregard for human life by 5 individuals who were within feet of him but never acted to assist him. The lack of action taken to address Mr. Bulthouse in his time of medical need was criminal. Unfortunately, Mr. Hulan passed away while at the Lansing Police Department's Detention Center. The officers in this case did what they were supposed to do under the circumstances. Now, I realize that fact does not make Mr. Hulan's death any less tragic, nor does it provide any greater comfort to his family. But our job is to determine whether it involved a criminal act, and we have found no evidence to support criminal charges. While there will be members of the community who will, no doubt, disagree with our assessment of these cases, we cannot and will not make criminal charging decisions based upon community outrage. We will not exonerate police officers where the evidence compels us to charge, nor will we charge officers where the evidence and the law compels us not to. Our department will continue to be guided by the evidence, the facts, the law, and our ethical obligations as prosecutors. Thank you.